Welcome to the Go Shout Love podcast. My name is Josh Veach, and it's an honor to have you joining us on this episode. If you've been around Go Shout Love for a while, today's guest will not be a stranger to you. I recently got to chat with Grace Grutter. Grace is the mom of Nella, who is actually the inspiration behind what started Go Shout Love back in 2014. If you want to listen to more of that story, you can tune in to episode 21 of our podcast, where I interview our founder, Kristen Estock. In today's episode, Grace shares about the reality of leaving the doctor's office and being told to prepare to bury her daughter, and how a stranger connecting on Facebook provided a glimpse of hope for the life that Nella could have. I hope you are inspired and encouraged by this conversation. I really enjoyed getting to talk with Grace and hear more of their story. As with every month, we continue the work that was sparked by Nella of shouting love and raising funds for kids on rare medical journeys. This month is no different. We are shouting love for a sweet girl named Emily. She's from South Carolina, and the funds raised will go towards purchasing a safe sleep bed for her. I'm a big fan of this month's t-shirt design, which reminds us to see and be the good. You can purchase that shirt or any product from our shop on our website, goshout.love, and it will go towards Emily's safe sleep bed. You can also start a monthly t-shirt subscription to support families just like Emily and just like Nella every month. Use the discount code podcast at checkout to save $5 off your first order. Again, that's discount code podcast at checkout. When you start a subscription, that'll save you $5 off of your first order. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's get to my conversation with Grace. Grace, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. It's so good to have you and talk with you and hear a little bit about your family's story and different elements of that. So before we get into some of those details, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for asking me to do this, by the way. It's an honor.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Well, I'm Grace. I live in Kansas City, Missouri, with my husband, Barron. He's a dentist, and I am a pediatric nurse. And we have 3 children. Bowen is our oldest. He is 8. And then we have Nella, who is our middle child, and she's 6. And we have a son, Corwin, who is 2. And so that's us.
You have a lot of busy going on with 8, 6, and 2.
Yes, we really do. And what's kind of fun is they all have birthdays within 8 days of each other.
Oh my gosh.
So
what,
we just
and what month is
finished
that?
up birthday. Well, Corwin is July 31st.
Okay, so
Nella's
they overlap.
August.
Okay.
Yes, and Nella's August 7th and Bowen's August 8th.
That's awesome. So an exciting week in your household.
Exactly. We call it birthday week.
That's
and
great.
We just knock them out.
Yeah. Well, kind of how you're connected with Go Shout Love is specifically through your daughter, Nella. And so tell us a little bit about her story, her diagnosis, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, of course. So Nella was born August 7th, 2013. She was born very healthy. Everything looked great when we took her home from the hospital. In about 6 weeks, I kind of started to realize that she wasn't kicking her legs as much. And like when I put her down for tummy time, she wasn't pushing up anymore. And so these were kind of, red flags going off to me. And so I started consulting with friends who are pediatric physical therapists and her pediatrician. And they all kind of agreed that there was a delay there, but they didn't think it was anything major. And then about 11 weeks, I took her into her pediatrician and I said, you know what, something's wrong and I'm not leaving until you tell me that you agree and we get to the bottom of this. And he said, yeah, you're right. And the next day we got into a pediatric neurologist and he kind of looked her over and she was still very healthy and she could hold her head up, but she was floppy almost. And he said, I think she has he said she has Wernicke-Hoffman syndrome. And I said, well, what is that? If you don't tell me what that is, I'm going to Google it, and like, just be upfront with me. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, it's fatal. And I just threw up.
Oh my gosh.
And then the nurses came in and, we're kind of I'm screaming. My mother-in-law and my mother were there. My husband was not there. And they handed me this handout, and it said spinal muscular atrophy type 1, and I knew exactly what it was, and I just kind of lost it. And then I had to call my husband, who was at work, and tell him what they were saying and that he needed to be here. And it was just probably just the most devastating day of our life.
Yeah. So they diagnosed that right on the visit, the day after your
yes.
visit with your pediatrician, and they didn't have to have any tests to confirm that. They were confident in saying this is what it is.
They were very confident based on her symptoms and her the way that her tongue was moving. It's called tongue fasciculations, and that's kind of a hallmark sign of spinal muscular atrophy. So they were very confident. So they did draw the blood, and about 2 weeks later, they called and confirmed that she did indeed have the deletion, and she had spinal muscular atrophy type 1.
So for those who may not be familiar with SMA, we've talked about it quite a bit, and we've had other kiddos in addition to Nella that have been featured that have SMA. But if someone's listening and they're not familiar with that, give us a rundown of what's going on in the body and what the outcomes of that are in the body.
Yeah, of course. So spinal muscular atrophy is a inherited disease. My husband and I are both carriers of that. And with every natural pregnancy, there is a 1 in 4 chance that the baby will be affected, that the baby will have SMA. So basically, my husband and I each gave Nella the deleted gene. So she has 0 copies of this gene called SMN1, survival motor neuron 1. So she doesn't have any copies of this. So the brain and the motor neurons aren't sending basically the message to the muscles, and the muscles are atrophying at rapid pace.
Because they're not getting exercise, right? They're not being used, and so they're kind of just
they're not the motor
down.
Neurons aren't. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of people say it's like ALS, but in babies. So it's a lot like that. It affects them quicker. And Nella has type 1, which accounts for 60% of all SMA cases. So it is the most common type of SMA.
And so when they gave you that diagnosis, what expectations did they give you as far as, what Nella's life would look like?
Yeah, of course. So at that very first appointment, they told us we had weeks to months left with her. If they didn't believe that, they sent us home on hospice and, basically kind of said, just love her for the time you have left with her and enjoy that time. And then, so I was getting so many texts and so many, people just reaching out to me. So I went ahead and started a prayer page for Nella. So that way I could ask for prayers and we could, kind of keep everybody updated without having to text everybody.
Right.
And through doing that, it was shared. And another local family in Kansas City reached out to us. They had a son who I believe was 4 or 5 at the time with SMA type 1. And they said, there are things you can do to try to help Nella live. And that included like a G-tube and, a BiPAP. And so that's when we decided, hey, we've got this 11-week-old baby girl and she is happy as can be. And she is thriving and she is, she's got this spark for life at 11 weeks old. And we just felt like we couldn't just accept that. And so, we've always said Nella is our guide, and everything that we choose for her life, she is the one guiding us.
Yeah.
She is the one telling us what she wants and what she wants to do. And, so far we have so much peace in that. And she just started thriving and growing and turning into this precious little girl. And so I think everything that we have done for her so far is, she has interventions. She has a feeding tube. She uses a ventilator through a BiPAP. She uses a cough assist machine. She uses a lot of machines, but they're just part of her and part of what we do. And so she's a very, very happy little girl. And also with that spinal muscular atrophy, I forgot to mention, it does not affect the brain.
Right.
So she is cognitively right where she should be. And she is a very happy and sassy 6-year-old.
What was it like to get that message from another SMA parent that had a child that was 5, that your initial expectations were 5, or reaching age 5 is completely unrealistic, I'm assuming,
right?
Based on what the medical professionals had said. What was hearing that news? That had to be kind of an emotional roller coaster to have someone at that point in their journey reach out. How did you process that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was incredibly hopeful, and also at the same time a little bit scary, because we're learning, all of the interventions that we will have to do to help Nella. And so like I said, it was hopeful. We were so hopeful that we would have more time with her, but it was a little overwhelming, because, they kind of gave us a good, this is what your life will look like. And while it's beautiful, it's also, hard, right, but it's worth it. And
I'm sure both you and Barron have become medical professionals in your own right through this journey.
Yeah. I feel I was a pediatric nurse at a local children's hospital here for 5 years, before. So I feel very blessed, and like, I don't feel like it was an accident that Nella was given to me, but
way more prepared to handle some of that than maybe some parents, at least on the medical side.
Yes. But there was still a huge learning curve, like I didn't know anything about ventilators. That was when I was in the hospital. That was all the respiratory therapist job. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn about cough assist, and being a caregiver to a child with SMA, you're basically everything. You're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a physical therapist, you're a occupational therapist, you're a teacher, you're just kind of everything. So while I feel like I did have a good head start, there was still so much to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm 6 years into this diagnosis, and I'm still learning new things every day.
Sure.
So,
in addition to those kind of day-to-day needs that Nella has, and managing all of that equipment and those actions to make sure that she's as healthy as she can be, are there any treatments or any therapies that are helping reduce or undo some of the outcomes or from SMA, or what kind of treatments are available?
Yeah, so spinal muscular atrophy has come so far just in the short amount of time we've been a part of the community. In 2016, December 23rd, 2016, the FDA approved a drug called Spinraza. It was the first treatment for spinal muscular atrophy. And so it is a drug that works by increasing how the backup copies of SMN2 work. And so a lot of kids are doing amazing on this. Nella has been getting it since December of 2016, and it has, I believe, halted the progression of her disease. And she's even made gains. But of course, this drug, it works best when given as early as possible. And so Nella didn't get it till she was fairly progressed. But for it to keep her disease from progressing is worth every single penny of it. And like I said, she's made gains. She's turning her head, her voice is louder. She's doing amazing things in physical and occupational therapy. And we're just so hopeful that she will keep gaining with this treatment.
Yeah, I was just reading up a little bit on that, because I had heard of Spinraza, but I hadn't really kind of dive deep on what that does, and to see some of the shifts in it's a gift at a life for some of these kids that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And I don't mean life from a value standpoint. I mean more from a functional standpoint. They're able
absolutely
to do more.
It changes SMA completely, 100%.
I want to jump to kind of the topic of advocacy. You have, through your social media channel that you mentioned you started as part of your journey, as kind of a prayer chain or place to keep people updated on Nella's journey. you've gained a lot of influence. And I'm sure because of the amount of people that kind of have followed her journey over the years, and I'm sure that comes with a certain level of a challenge maybe and stewardship. Like what do you do with that influence? And it seems like you've really used that to advocate beyond just Nella's needs, but for all the kids that are in the SMA community, including from a legislative standpoint. I think you were involved in helping get a bill passed in Missouri for screening for SMA. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that whole journey and how you got into that and what has come from that?
Yeah. So back in it was 2016, a House representative named Becky Ruth in Missouri was working on adding spinal muscular atrophy to the newborn screen. And so I was asked to come down and speak before the House of Representatives and tell our story about Nella and why newborn screening is important, especially now that we have treatment available. So I went down there and spoke before the House of Representatives, and it was incredibly powerful, but it was also hard. I had to talk about the hard parts of our lives. While we live with joy and we do a really good job in our everyday life, there are some hard things, and this life is challenging. Sure. And so I had to lay out the hard parts of our life, but like I said, it worked. And then it went on to the Senate, and it passed there. And I went and talked again before the Senate, and then the bill passed in July of 2017. And then starting in January of 2019, Missouri started screening all newborns for spinal muscular atrophy. Right now, I think we have 6 or 7 states that are screening for SMA in newborns, and we're hopeful that all states will follow pretty soon. So I just talked with another family in Missouri who their daughter was diagnosed through newborn screening, and it was just incredible, just to know that her life will be so different because they found out so early. Yeah.
So they can get her into treatments immediately and stop the progression or slow the progression much sooner.
Yeah, I believe actually there's been another treatment that was released in May called Zolgensma, and that is actually this really cool therapy. It's called gene therapy, where they use a virus to deliver the SMN1 gene, and that's FDA approved for babies under 2. And it's a one-time treatment, which is really cool. So this little baby in Missouri just recently got that, and I have chills right now. Like, just amazing that their life is completely changed because of newborn screening.
So when you say that they use a virus to deliver the gene, that's not considered a cure though, right?
I don't think they are able to say it's a cure, but it's the closest thing we have to one right now.
Okay. So it's a one-time treatment that then actually allows that gene to kind of reproduce throughout the body and basically override the deletion. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. From what I understand is what these children have the deleted gene, in their system before, and then they get the gene through the virus. And then later on, if you go to draw their blood, the gene is there now.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And they have several children who got it as newborns, and they are walking, and they're, typically they would be like my Nella, and they're not showing any signs of SMA.
That's amazing. So, I had not heard of that. So, and you said that was released in 2019. So this year.
Yep. In May. And there's been a lot of talk about it on the news. It's a $2.1 million drug.
Good Lord.
I know, but, it's worth it. To change a baby's life completely,
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely worth it.
And Spinraza is not a cheap drug. Not a cheap treatment.
No, it is not. It's about $125,000 an injection, and they get injections every 4 months. So Nella, I think she's had 11 or 12. So she's a $1 million baby herself.
Yeah. Now, is that something that, and if you're not comfortable answering that, that's totally okay. Is that something that insurance covers, and do you have to fight for that, or is it?
It is a fight. Ours covers it. So we're very lucky. I do believe most insurance companies are covering Spinraza, but I know it's always a battle with insurance companies with everything.
I'm sure that could be an entire episode itself in talking how to navigate the insurance puzzle.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I joke that I need like an insurance case manager just to work on all of my insurance.
I believe that. I believe that.
Fights.
What advice would you give to moms or dads or caregivers who are on their own medical journey, and especially when it comes to advocating for their child?
Right. Absolutely. That kind of goes back to the, our first diagnosis with Nella. Finding a community of other parents and families who are going through what you're going through, or they have the same diagnosis, because that has been huge for us. Had we not found this other family, or had they not reached out to us, I don't know where we would be or how different, life would be, which is honestly the amazing thing about social media is, we were connected in that way. But I just think talking to other parents and saying, what is working for your child? Because they're the experts. They're the ones who are eating, sleeping, breathing this diagnosis all the time, So for me, having good friends and having such a great SMA community where I know, I mean, the doctors have done amazing things for Nella, but a lot of what I've learned about caring for Nella has come from them, so that has been a huge thing for me. And for them to, not for them to say your doctor's wrong, but for them to say, this is the way we're doing things. And this is the way that's working. And if what has been presented for your child for right now is working, it might be uncomfortable, but you're going to have to step up and say, this is not, I feel differently, because you are your child's advocate. Like I am Nella's voice. Without me speaking up and asking for what she needs, it's kind of, she would be on her own and think, I'm not sure I'm making sense here.
No, you are. Yeah, that makes sense.
But just not being afraid to do that.
So I'm assuming that in some ways receiving that advice and that support and that words of encouragement or even practical tips from people who have journeyed before you probably just comes with an innate sense of, I'm going to pass this on and be a wealth of information to the next family as much as I can. And
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's more kind of like other families come to you with questions and you're like, yes, I've been there and this is what helped. And I don't know, I am so eternally grateful for the help that I've received from other families that I hope that I'm always able to give that back. Yeah.
You mentioned that from a neurological standpoint, Nella is right where she needs to be. And yet, based on SMA, her ability to communicate is drastically affected by that. Talk a little bit about how you are able to communicate and how she's able to communicate with you and what you've learned. This is kind of maybe I'm not going to ask this very well, but what you've learned about humanity and our ability to communicate. Does that make sense? Because
yeah,
we absolutely. Have a normal, we kind of have our normal expectation of what communication looks like. And I would assume in your position, that's probably shifted since what you looked at communication before Nella. Tell us a little bit about that.
Of course. So Nella is nonverbal. Her muscles are not strong enough for her to actively form words, but she is very vocal. So we can... I can read her very well, and I know her vocalizations. Most people, her father and I we just know, but it takes a lot for other people to kind of figure them out. She can also say, and then she uses her eyes. So she blinks once for yes, and then she'll either blink twice or look away for no. And then we also have this really cool thing called an eye gaze that we're always... that sometimes Nella does really well with, and sometimes she gets a little overwhelmed and kind of doesn't want it because there are very few things that she can control. And she's like, hey, if I can control this, then she feels like she's winning. But
Right.
so she answers yes and no, and she has a board that says like different things. Like one of them will be like, if she's upset, we'll ask her if something hurts, and she can use her eyes to go to the icon that says belly. My belly hurts. And then so like in school, her teacher will ask her, what is the weather today? Is it sunny or is it cloudy? And so Nella will pick the box on her eye gaze that says it's sunny, or the yes no box. It's always a work in progress, but she's made amazing strides in that as well. But kind of a cool thing what you were saying. So my oldest son the other day, he was telling us about, he said, Mom, I've got our family figured out. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he said, you're the tired one. And I was like, well, yep, that's true. And he said, Dad's the strong one. I'm the adventurous one. Corwin is the crazy one. And Nella is the funny one. And so, I mean, Bowen has never heard Nella speak a word, but for him to know her personality is that she is funny.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps and just felt, wow.
What a special thing to hear your son say.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he's so amazing with her. He'll look at her and he'll say, how was your day? And all she has to do is look at him and he'll say, I know, I missed you too. He's just so sweet with her.
That's amazing.
And I feel like, the connection that he has with her, even though she's never been able to speak a word to him, like, that's just what you hope for everyone. And I hope that she's able to build more relationships like that,
Yeah. Well, so she just started kindergarten, right?
She did. She is not in the classroom yet. We're running into a bit of red tape with that. But she has a homebound instructor right now, and we're hoping she gets to go into her classroom for a little bit next week.
Okay, awesome. And hopefully that will help that journey of developing those relationships, similar to what she has with her older brother. Yeah.
Yes, she loves being around other children. She loves being social. So I have no doubt my little social butterfly will just take off and love every minute of it.
Yeah. Is that a scary season for you?
Yes, it is. Nella, it's really hard with a child like Nella because you want to protect them, but you also have to give them life. You have to let them live. And so I know that by putting her in a classroom, especially a kindergarten classroom, I'm basically putting her in a petri dish. But,
Right.
we're hoping that by saying, you can hold hands, but don't touch her face. And, we're hoping that we can eliminate, but at the same time, like, that's what Nella wants. She wants to go to kindergarten. So we have to let her go while protecting her the best we can, but we have to let her do that and experience that.
Sure. I'm assuming that reaching that season, and especially when she gets to go to the classroom, is a big win for your family. What other wins have you experienced along this journey as a family?
Wow. That's I got goosebumps. I think when I think back to that day when she was diagnosed and the paralyzing, suffocating grief we felt, and just how our life was over, like we have this beautiful baby and we're going to bury her. And then it was hard things. And I think the win is just that we were like, you know what, this is hard. And, but we're moving forward. We can do this, and like, here we are 6 years later, and I feel like we're thriving. I feel, I feel like all of us are so happy, and our life looks 100% different than most other people. But I think, just that win of being joyful and moving forward and thriving and living our life as normally as we can is absolutely a big thing. And then again, like the newborn screening, like I feel like the newborn screening, like that's because of Nella. And like Go Shout Love, what you guys do, like that's because of Nella. And like, those things are just Oh, I've got goosebumps and like tearing up. Like I just, I'm just in awe, of the amazing things that have come out of something very hard.
Right. I want to come back to the Go Shout Love relationship here in just a second, but going back to, you talked about kind of the win, kind of being, if I'm understanding correctly, a shift in perspective,
Yes.
kind of going from that, I'm going to bury my baby to we are going to do our best and thrive as much as possible.
Yes.
What did that journey look like? Because we've had another parent at one time kind of even make the comment because they received a similar diagnosis where their child was not supposed to live very long. And it was hard for them. I think it was the dad specifically that was talking, saying basically like, I had a hard time loving my child fully because I was fearful of the grief that would be coming shortly. And
Yes.
then they had to work through that and realize our child is way, over, they're killing these expectations, right? They're way beyond what the
Right.
doctor said they would do. And I've missed out on fully embracing and loving this child out of my own fear or my own selfishness or whatever, not intentionally, but that was just their journey.
Right. Yeah.
How did you
absolutely.
navigate that shift from going home from the hospital with hospice, being on hospice care, to we're looking to the future and we're looking to tomorrow and making the most of today in the process?
Yeah, I would have to say it was not overnight. I remember when we came home, I came home and from that appointment, and I'm crying and I'm nursing Nella and I'm looking outside and the sun is shining. And I was so angry that the sun even had the nerve to be shining when we just like had this horrible diagnosis. But time and a lot of time has healed a lot of it. I grieved, and I think that I was very lucky that my friends and my family like allowed me to feel all the feelings that I felt, like they say there's the 5 stages of grief for the life you had planned for your child. And then there's anger and acceptance. And, I think that you have to let yourself feel all that. And at the same time, I think, again, going back to the community where there are other families and other moms who have said, yeah, I felt that. But then I don't know, just looking at my children and, and my husband, and it's like, we only have this life. And I know we have a short amount of time with Nella, and I don't want to ever look back and think I didn't do something because I was fearful, or I didn't love her as hard as I could because I was so scared of losing her, and that's my journey. I'm not saying how he felt was wrong, because that everybody has to feel how they have to feel, and it's not wrong. It's just different.
Right.
So I think for me, like I said, the time and just letting myself feel what I needed to feel, and then kind of picking myself back up and saying, all right, this is, what life has given us, and we are going to do the very best we can.
Yeah. What has Nella taught you?
Oh my goodness. Goosebumps again. So much. Obviously not to sweat the small things. We know what the important things are, how to love, a life well loved. She's loved with a love beyond love. And that's how we treat all our kids. I think we went from a life where we were kind of focused on ourselves and, on our day to day, and life is busy and life is hectic and let's just get through today. And we were just kind of a mind shift of like, we're all together and we love each other, and it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
It's just, and our faith is a big part of our journey too. And it's just kind of eternal focused in that loving and helping each other. And I feel like I've been able to reach out to other families and be a support for other people because she has taught me, just the important things, really, what they are.
Yeah.
So I'm not making sense.
No, I understand. What about for Bowen and Corwin? What have they taught you?
Oh gosh. They always say if you want to know how to treat somebody with special needs, to see how their siblings treat them. And like I said, Bowen is just, and Corwin's too, and he's still learning and everything, and
Sure.
he's so sweet with his sister. But Bowen is just an incredible individual, and he's grown. Nella, he was 2 when Nella was diagnosed, so he was itty bitty. So really, this life is all he remembers as well. But he sees any kid with disabilities, and he knows they're a child. He just goes right up to them. He's so careful with Nella. He's so good to her. He's always thinking of her. He goes in and he prays with her. He lays and watches movies. He comforts her. To him, Nella is his sister, and Nella is his sister. She's not Nella with SMA,
Right.
She's Nella. And so I think just the way he loves her unconditionally, and just the way he looks at her and he loves her. And, she couldn't start school this week because of a little bit of red tape. And he cried because he was so excited for his sister to be at school with him.
Yeah.
So, and also the resiliency of Bowen. I mean, like I said, our life is different, and it's probably a lot harder than most people's, but I don't think that he realizes that.
Yeah.
And I think, he just goes with the flow. And I mean, Corwin does too. At 2 years old, he's, just been so resilient. But the way they love and the way they adapt has just been, has made me feel really at peace with a lot of how our life is.
Sure. Yeah. And it has to help you feel proud too, that you and Baron are doing an amazing job raising 3 great humans.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
Beyond challenges that come with a diagnosis like that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I want to touch base. You mentioned it a second ago on the relationship with Go Shout Love. Your whole family is deeply loved by our whole team. And we've talked a little bit about this when in an earlier episode when we were talking about the early days of Go Shout Love in an interview with Kristen. But I'd like to hear it from your side. Nella obviously played a big role in Go Shout Love even being in existence and why we're here today. So from your shoes, what's that relationship like?
Yeah.
And where did it
Kristen,
come from?
Oh my gosh, she has the best heart. I still am in just awe of this relationship and how everything worked. So I believe Kristen followed us from a friend of a friend. And I remember, first of all, she and her mom sent us these Target gift cards. And it was like the stranger sending us this Target gift. It was the sweetest, wow moment, And then she asked if she could write a blog post about Nella. And I was like, yeah, of course. And she just wrote the sweetest blog post, just kind of talking about our family and how we choose joy. In that time, we were very scared, we were thinking, we could lose Nella at any moment. And while we still feel that way, and that it's still very true, I think even then it was much more on our mind at all times. And it was the sweetest blog post. And then she asked if she could organize an auction on Instagram for our family. And I said, yeah, absolutely, of course. And just the way she reached out, and she reached out to bigger bloggers, and the auction was just wonderful. And it helped us so much because at that time we had so many medical bills from Nella, and it was absolutely amazing. And we were able to use that money to get a generator for her equipment so that if we lose power,
which is pretty common in Kansas City. Storms
unfortunately, that happens. I know. And so that was absolutely amazing. And then to see that it turned into Go Shout Love and started sponsoring other children and other families and helping them. And, I just, goosebumps again, what Go Shout Love does. And it makes families like ours feel like we're not alone. There's a community of all these other families who have children on special journeys and rare journeys, and just that community, and to feel the love, I just can't put into words how amazing that is.
That's good to hear. That's our goal. We, in some ways, I feel like we are connecting those that are outside of the community, those who maybe don't have kids on rare medical journeys, to help them kind of learn to be encouragers and people that can rally around families, but also we find every month when we introduce a new family that has a different diagnosis, that they will, through that relationship, connect with other families that have experienced the same diagnosis, and they get everything from as big as the emotional support and how to, journey through some of these really hard things to, here's a tip on a G-tube on how to make, day-to-day life a little simpler, and things like, that just, they don't naturally learn that or come across that in their day-to-day, but by kind of gathering in the same space of families that are dealing with some of the same challenges, they're able to gain from that. So we're really glad to hear you, feel that way. And that's our hope for all families, that they would feel encouraged and supported. And then if we're able to help financially as well, which is our goal too, but that's, to us, that's kind of icing on the cake.
The love is the love for our families when, the whole world kind of, we feel different in our everyday life, in the real world, but to have this community and to have this love and to have other people saying, we're here, we love you guys. Mm-hmm. Like, what can we do? How can we support you and encourage you? Like, not only does that benefit that child, that benefits the whole family, which benefits everyone, you know?
Yeah. Well, Grace, thank you so much for taking time out of I know your schedule's busy, and it means a lot that you would take time to chat with me and share Nella's story. And before we go, how can people who are listening follow Nella's story online? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I am at Bowen, Nella, and Co. on Instagram. And then I also have a prayer page for Nella on Facebook called Prayers for Nella. I'm usually quite a bit better at updating Instagram, but I do also update the Prayers for Nella page as well.
Okay, awesome. And we'll link to that in the show notes too.
Wonderful.
Thanks again. And thanks for also continuing to be an advocate for Go Shout Love and helping us spread the word whenever we feature new kids. It means a lot to us that you would be willing to help us in our mission, and we're so excited to see Nella thrive in her year of kindergarten.
Oh, thank you guys, and thank you for everything you do and for having us, and you guys are wonderful, and we love you guys, so thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Grace. To help us connect with more people, we would love for you to take just a minute and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might be listening. Also, a quick reminder, you can save $5 today when you start a monthly t-shirt subscription and be support to kids just like Nella and just like Everly. Just visit our website, goshout.love, to start your subscription and use the discount code podcast at checkout. Again, that's podcast at checkout to save $5 off your first order of your subscription. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.